say a lot. This is a lot to say.
It should be a lot to say.
Section 14.
It's a 3-page contract document.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for being so anal about putting everything down on paper and giving it to us. No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Thorough. Let's go ahead and replace that vocabulary word immediately. Well, welcome to the buyer consultation. Thank you all for being here. The goal for today is to be able to go through this document paragraph by paragraph and articulate to your clients why it's important that they hire you to represent them on the largest transaction of their lives. So I'm Linda Birch. For those of you that don't know, I've been here at Keller Williams since 2008. This will be my 16th year. I was a buyer specialist for many, many years, and I am now running a team, and then also I'm your team leader here. So what, aside from being able to articulate this document to your clients, what is important for you right now in learning about this document? What about it, Risa? What about the lawsuit? Okay, so here's what I'll tell you. In Utah, we do things right. We have this thing called a buyer-broker agreement where we actually establish agency. The lawsuit is actually addressing the 39 other states in our 50-state union that do not have buyer representation. So yes, I can understand where that would be a little bit confusing for us as agents here in Utah because we are doing things the right way. So for us, it's a very minimal change. I think the biggest change we're going to see with our agent base is not putting a 0 in that compensation amount because we all work for money, right? Like how many of you signed up to do real estate for free? Congratulations, you should get paid. So that's going to be probably the biggest shift is being able to fill that out and fill it out correctly so you can get paid. But as far as the lawsuit's concerned, we're not one of the states that's in trouble for this. We don't have implied agency. We actually have a signed buyer broker agreement. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. What else? We're doing it right. We are the example, not the exception. So how is the not putting the buyer? So are the sellers still going to pay the buyer's commission? So everything's negotiable. It's going to be a different conversation when you're ready to make an offer. But for the purpose of this class, we're just going to learn how to sign the agreement so you can get paid what you charge. Does that make sense?
I want to be able to better articulate what I'm charging for.
Okay.
I'm going to say 3%, whatever the seller wants to compensate is fine, but I want to be able to I used to always just say, don't worry, I'm going to fight with the seller for that, but now I'm like, I don't know, we do the thing.
Well, and I want to articulate what the news is saying about the NAR lawsuit and how it is going to affect my particular buyer. They're coming in with preconceived notions that I'm going to have to deal with, right?
Like what?
I don't know. We're not going to have to get paid. We're not going to pay anymore, or we're going to have to pay our own, or I don't know what the news is saying. I don't watch the news.
Okay. I don't watch the news either. I'm not changing anything in my business. I'm still providing the same level of service that my clients would pay for whether or not this lawsuit had happened. So I guess for clarity's sake, what specific objections are you anticipating that you will have to handle?
Do I got to pay?
You already do pay for my services. And John, I might ask you, let me pivot this and kind of answer with a different question. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if you were to say, go through a divorce, would you hire your spouse's divorce attorney to handle your divorce?
Heck no. There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
For our discussion earlier, you're gonna go over all of this on Friday?
So today we're going to talk about the buyer broker agreement and the ancillary contract paperwork by itself, standalone. Go through it, make sure you understand it. On Friday, what I'm going to be presenting is my actual buyer presentation. Like, how do you put it all together? Does that make sense?
And talk about the difference between what we're asking to be paid and what the seller's agent broker will be willing to pay. Have that conversation up front.
What happens if the seller pays less or offers less than I charge, right, Barb?
Correct.
Nate?
I think the conversation to close, meaning getting this signed at the first meeting, because I think that's something as realtors, we probably present a lot of times in our prior presentation, but we probably don't get it signed until we're actually submitting on first in a lot of cases. I think with the lawsuit, it's more pertinent to get this just signed when you meet with them.
Well, and also, from the day law said, just tell your broker, told you you do not sell a house.
Yeah.
Until you get this signed.
So that's part of it, right? It is technically against the code of ethics, against everything that you have signed up agreeing to, especially with your super key box access as a realtor. You cannot show homes to anyone but your clients. How do you get a client? Exactly. So yes, there is truth to that. Like, hey, I would love to work with you, and it seems like you'd love to work with me. And to make things a formal agreement, let me go through this contract with you and make sure I answer all of your questions so you feel comfortable signing it. Okay? Jocelyn.
I have two questions since I'm from one of those 39 states that doesn't have buyer agency.
Florida's weird.
And I never signed one of these before. My two questions are, what about with VA buyers?
Okay.
How do you get them, like, if you can't put $0 on there, it's a non-allowable fee, how do you navigate that kind of situation? And two, how do you have conversations with, like, let's say online leads or something like that, that just want to see property? How do you navigate, like, do you put 1 day buyer agreement or something like that?
So cold lead conversion. Okay. And then I'm not going to be able to answer your VA buyer question completely today. I know that they're working on it. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac just released last week that allowable concessions. So if you were to write in the contract, seller to pay instead of 3%, 6% in closing costs, and 3% of that or whatever you charge is toward the buyer's agent commission. Fannie and Freddie are no longer counting buyer's agent commission against allowable seller concessions. So they are making some headway for that to get fixed, and it's not totally clear yet.
Yeah, I saw that, but they didn't mention anything about VA.
Yeah. Kayla,
I have two questions.
okay,
What time is your buyer presentation on Friday?
12 o'clock.
Okay, and then I've also seen that Zillow is now offering,
Won't apply here.
okay,
For everyone that doesn't know what she's talking about, Zillow just came out with, it's a 7-day conditional, it's an agreement to represent but not represent someone, like a way to show them homes. It doesn't work here because here in Utah, you have to have a client to show them a home. And how do you have a client?
does that mean that Zillow just can't even run that sort of special thing that they're doing here in Utah?
Broker Dave's advice this morning to me was they're trying to paint with a big paintbrush a national thing, which is hard to do in 50 independently run states. So I don't know how well that's going to work out for them. Certainly it seems like a gimmick to get people to still pay for their Zillow leads. I don't know legally how that's going to stand up in a state where for you to have a client as a realtor, you need a signed buyer agency agreement. Liz?
How do you articulate, like, if things go sideways with your client, either do you wanna fire them or they wanna fire you, how do you talk to them about that, you can get out of this agreement? What do you?
Like, I don't want to marry you, I just want to date you? Yeah, we'll go over that. Okay. Anyone else before we get started? Hannah?
I want to know how to get this done in a good time. So if there's not the consultation going through the contract and not getting stuck on certain places, and then to like, what's going on with something,
Hmm?
it's not a 2 hour.
So if you're explaining it well the first time, you should get some pretty specific questions and it shouldn't get you hung up. The key to this is going to be knowing it and practicing it so that when you get those questions, you already know the answers. Does that make sense? Because every buyer's questions are going to be different. Knowing this material is going to be imperative so that then the specific client questions you get, you can answer them really specifically, knowing this document inside out. Does that make sense? So let's get started. Obviously, you have this packet put together. This is a compilation of everything that I have run into and put together as a training when I was hiring buyer agents on my team. So the pre-appointment, obviously you want to set the consultation, and to speak to those of you that are concerned with how do I convert a cold lead, make it about them, right? This has to be a value for them. So rather than me going and showing you this one home, Jocelyn, would this be a benefit to you if we could sit down and go over your very specific needs that you're looking for your house, and let me identify maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 homes that fit what you're looking for that we could go see all at the same time rather than just one at a time, so we could consolidate and save you time and money? Let's go ahead and set the appointment. Right? So your goal when you get these leads, when you get these calls, is to be the professional that sits down with these clients and identifies their individual wants and needs before you go and take them to see homes, or before you go and meet them and open a door that they called on. Because how many of you go and answer one of those calls and show one home and that's the house they buy? It's like not the norm, right? It happens sometimes and it's not the norm. And so if we can start to cultivate that conversation and pivot it more to, I would love to save you time and money, and I would love to get to know more about your goals and your needs. Let's go ahead and schedule a consultation so that we can identify all the properties that fit what you're looking for, not just one. I only see like 3 of you writing that down. But that's going to be your golden ticket to getting them to say yes to a consultation, is providing value. Okay? So step 2 there is going to be schedule it in your calendar, send an email confirmation with your with the office address and a map for your client so that they can show up. Book a conference room with the front desk, confirm the appointment within 24 hours. Why is it important to confirm the appointment with the client? Right? Some people forget. Some people just planned on setting that appointment with you and weren't intending on showing up. So confirm it so you're not sitting here waiting. Prepare your documents. So have your buyer packet, your buyer information sheet. If you do a home buying cost sheet, which I've included one in here for you, your buyer broker, your buyer due diligence, for your protection, and the affiliate business disclosure. Make sure you have all of that ready to go so that at the end of the appointment, you can go ahead and get those signed before you go out and show homes. John?
You have a set consultation, there's not a lot of detail on qualifying the prospect, right?
So one thing I'm going to do first is when they call me, there's a series of questions that I'm going to ask. So if you call me on one specific property, I'm going to identify whether or not you are already pre-qualified or if you're paying cash. So that's one of the first questions that I ask. If you were to call me and say, hey, Linda, I'm calling you about 123 Main Street, I'm going to ask you, that's a great property. And depending on the contract status, I'm going to ask, is that the neighborhood and price range that you're looking in? If they tell me yes, then I'm going to pivot that to, the value add would it be a benefit to you if we sat down and I had identified more properties in this area and price range that fit what you're looking for so that we can see all of them at the same time? And then you tell me yes, right? I'm going to ask you, great, have you already met with a lender or are you going to be paying cash? So I already know those pieces of information before I set the appointment. If you tell me no, you haven't met with a lender and no, you're not paying cash, then I'm going to offer you an additional value add. I'm going to ask if it would be a benefit to you if before we sat down and met, you got pre-qualified so that you know what price range you're looking in and you can afford, so that, again, you're looking at properties that match with what you're looking to buy. Okay?
Yeah, there's a series of qualifying questions.
Hmm?
Let me ask another quick question while we're thinking about it. I'm getting these leads through command that they say, call me on WhatsApp. And yeah. I
If anyone tells you they prefer to communicate on WhatsApp, it's the same as text, email, and phone. Like there's literally, I don't understand that scam at all, but the large majority of those are scammy. So again, this is why you pre-qualify people. Who are you? Do you live here? Are you paying cash? Do you need to get in touch with a lender? Like you want to know as much as you can, including phone number, email address, full name. Like you want to know all of that information before. And then also for safety, right? Like I don't understand why you would want to answer a cold call and run right out and meet a person that you don't know who they are, you don't know if they're qualified, you don't know if they're a serial killer, like honestly, and you're going to go meet this stranger at a property and unlock a door to possibly a vacant house. Listen, I knew that guy. But like safety, right? Like you guys want to be pre-qualifying all of these leads, not only so you know that it's viable business, but also so you're not putting yourself at risk.
Well, you want a copy of their driver's license.
Maybe. I also just want to know they're a real person.
Maybe.
Yes.
Only because you guys provide the engineers so I can be legal on you. When a listing, and you actually bring us a listing agreement, so part of what the seller is hiring you to do is to keep their safety safe also. And so, the standing joke is part of what we do is separate the prospects from the suspects. And that's true, because if they're not real on WhatsApp, or if they do want to be, and we've got horror stories of people being trapped in basements and all that kind of stuff. But that's our safety. It's also the people that go around looking for things that they can find in the seller's house or leaving the window open and all that kind of stuff that we need to have some tracking. Part two of that is a buyer consultation at the very beginning. I don't know what the buyer doesn't know. And it is an interview process to find out what their experiences are, what they're expecting, what they know and don't know. Because if I don't know that, how can I provide the service that I'm about to enter into with the buyer agency agreement? I mean, they don't know the questions to ask if they don't know the questions to ask. And part of what we do is ask questions to prompt them to think about something going, oh yeah, that'd be a good thing to know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a two-way street. The vetting process is just as much for them as it is for you. And by the way, if you are answering cold call leads and going and opening doors for people you don't know, and that person happens to steal something from the listing you just showed, who's responsible for that? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big, not only is this a value add in having an opportunity to explain your services to the buyer, it's also an opportunity for you to understand who you are working with and make a decision whether or not you want to work with them. It's not all about, do they want to work with you? Can you help these people? Right? And the only opportunity for you to really do that is to actually set a consultation and consult with them.
Feels good, doesn't it? Was it something that they did or didn't do that you couldn't have found out earlier? And that's what we're trying to avoid, is it's more difficult to get out of a contract than it is to never get in. And so it shouldn't be all about us pitching what we do. You gotta have a mutual, some type of an agreement
Right. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so at the appointment, you're going to go through introductions. Obviously, you're going to go through some sort of needs analysis to narrow down their motivation and what they're looking for, and then the lender that they're working with if they are working with one.
So if we're gonna pair it in cash,
Mhm.
what are,
Proof of funds. Yep. And then so basically in the appointment, I've given you the whole outline because we're going to go through this again on Friday. But during the appointment, I'm building rapport. I'm asking what they want. I'm asking why what they want is important to them. I'm asking when they want it. I'm asking what it looks like to receive stellar service from me. How would I earn their referral business from them? And then we're going to go through, after I have the agreement signed, we're going to go through the MLS and identify the properties that they want to see. Okay, everybody clear on that? That's all happening Friday. I'll show you all of that. The contracts themselves, before I get on the MLS, I'm going to run through the contracts with them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the buyer broker agreement. So you've got a copy there. It's probably halfway through this packet. But let's go ahead and go through what each of these paragraphs mean. So who wants to read section 1? Barb.
Section 1.
So-
Term of agreement. The buyer hereby retains the company, including Linda Burke, the buyer's agent, quote unquote, as the authorized agent for the company, starting on the effective date as defined in section 15 below, and ending at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on the blank day of blank 20 blank. For the closing of the acquisition of a property, known as closing, whichever occurs first, the initial term. To act as the exclusive buyer's agent in locating and/or negotiating for the acquisition of a property in blank county, Utah, or located at blank property address. During the initial term of this exclusive buyer-broker agreement and any extensions thereof, the buyer agrees not to enter into another buyer-broker agreement with another real estate agent or brokerage.
Does anybody have any questions on the first section?
I had a question prior to reading the agreement.
Yeah.
And that's if you're setting the appointment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-appointment, or you're setting the consultation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's if they said over the phone to you, or whether you, not that I'm not just I haven't seen in person, and they mentioned they've seen a home in person,
Mm-hmm.
are you asking?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Working with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and if they say, well, we put in offers 6 months ago, you're still setting the
I'm going to qualify that further. So Nick, if you call me and you say, so I'm going to ask you, are you already working with an agent? And you tell me, well, we've seen a couple homes, right? That's great. Do you have an agency agreement with the agent you're working with? You know, I would encourage you, Nick, to go back through. Have you written any offers? Okay, I would really take a close look at your paperwork and see if you signed a buyer agency agreement.
I haven't talked to them in a long time, and now that I've met you, I'm interested in seeing you guys off.
Okay, I would probably set the appointment with the caveat that I'm going to go through this agreement with them in that appointment. And if it starts to ring bells, we're going to stop and have a different conversation, right? If you go through all of this whole agreement and they don't know, they've never seen this before, I'll probably proceed. But I'm going to know in the back of my mind that they might have that signed. I want them to go through all the paperwork they've signed with their previous agent and make sure they haven't signed this before they sign it with me.
So if they come out and say, yeah, I did sign something.
Great. I cannot help you. I can't represent you until you have wrapped up that agreement with your other agent.
Because this is the buyer actually agreeing not to enter an agreement.
Absolutely. It actually says it in 2 different places. It says it in paragraph 1 right there. It also says it in paragraph 4.
So they have to acknowledge that they're the ones saying, we have not entered an agreement with someone else.
Yep. Mhm.
And if they straight up lie to you and they do have an agreement, but they sign yours,
I mean, this is why we should be going over this agreement. It should be very clear to these people that they should not have signed this agreement with anybody else. And now after July, it's going to be really clear, right? Like, if you've seen a home with another agent, you have probably signed this. Mhm. Maybe we'll see. And we're going to do it the right way.
We're gonna do it the right way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Is there ever a term that's too long? Like, let's say my grandmother wanted to buy a house by 2025, send her to a lender. Can you start right then? with
Yeah.
this And it's okay?
Yep.
Maybe a year's qualified, a year.
Just make sure during that whole entire time that you're providing value and service so that they don't forget that they signed this agreement with you, right? So this is all about value. If you're going to tell me, hey, Linda, I want to meet with you, but I'm not planning on buying a house until 2 years from now, I'm either going to stay in really close touch with you and not sign this agreement, but make sure that I'm staying in touch with you the whole time. If I want to sign a 2-year agreement, and I'm going to hold my own feet to the fire and make sure that every week I'm talking to you because you are an active client of mine. So that's going to be up to you. Good questions. Okay, section 2. Who wants to go over that? John.
Brokerage fee, 2.1, buyer's obligation to pay brokerage fee. If during the initial term or any extension of the initial term, the buyer or any other person acting in the buyer's behalf acquires an interest in any real property as referenced in section 1 above, the buyer agrees to pay to the company a brokerage fee in the amount of blank and blank percent of the acquisition price of the property.
Okay,
Brokerage fee.
stop there. Who has questions on that? That is 100% where you're not going to put 0.
Yeah.
Kayla.
Who would be, any other person acting in the buyer's behalf?
Trustee,
Okay.
Yeah, so that could be a power of attorney, that could be a trustee, that could be a representative of the trust. Like if the buyer is the trust, it would be the trustee. Yeah, good question. Any other questions?
what are we suggesting to put down? 3%? Because you're limited at whatever percent you put down there. You can't take. more
That's
than
up to you. What do you charge for your services?
You're doing 3.5.
I'm doing 5.
Let's hope not.
I mean, Liz, you can charge 8 if you want to. It's a free market. This is what the NAR settlement was about. This is about transparency and what you charge for the value you provide. And you will be compensated in direct proportion to the amount of value you provide to your clients. If you're not providing enough value to justify 5%, then yeah, sure, that's going to be a hard sell. But if you have enough value in front of them and you have gone through your entire presentation and they're like, man, this is rock star service. Like I would pay 10% for this, and then you're only charging 5, that's a deal. So this is all about conveying value. Mike.
So I'm seeing a lot of situations now, particularly with new home construction, where they're offering 4%, 5%. If we have 3% on this contract, we can't accept another 3%.
Nobody said you can't amend your agreement. You just can't accept more without your buyer being aware of what you're being compensated.
that goes through both ways, amend it up or amend it down.
I don't see why not. Do we change closing costs all the time? Do we change the purchase price all the time? Like we still need a lot of clarity on this. And again, the settlement isn't finalized. And at the end of the day, in the proposed settlement, it says that you as the buyer's agent cannot accept more than what is agreed to and outlined in your agreement. It doesn't ever say anywhere that you can't change that. It just needs to be written and acknowledged by both parties. Make sense?
You're putting 3% there and nothing down on the portion.
Then it would be a 3%.
Right, so are you? NA.
No, that's a or like a,
Well, some people put their transactions there.
Some people put like dashes there, I've seen like just to cross it out, I just wondering what's.
Not,
Yeah, that's a man.
yeah, one, you can cross it out. One of those fields must be filled in, and then you have to stick to whatever it is. So not necessary to cross it out or put NA. If you put NA, then that's not applicable, right? I'd be careful to put that. It says actually, the buyer agrees to pay to the company a brokerage fee in the amount of dollar amount and % of the acquisition price of the property. So if your dollar amount is blank and 3%, that's not going to matter, right? If your dollar amount is a dollar amount and the % is left, like they cover each other. Does that make sense? You can. So what Liz was saying, so if you have a $5.95 transaction fee and 3% of the acquisition price, you would fill in both.
So you're saying you can leave it. As long as you're.
Just don't put 0 in there because you will work for free. Anyone else? Okay, so section 2.2 is the new section. So this is satisfaction of brokerage fee by a third party. This is if the seller's offering to pay. So 2.1 says who's responsible for paying you? That's right. Section 2.2 is where you can go into a little bit of explanation. So section 2.2 says that if the property acquired by the buyer is listed with a brokerage on a multiple listing service and the buyer brokerage compensation, BBC, and again, this is going to change because what happens in July? BBC goes away off the MLS. So there will be revisions to this, but for right now, it says that the buyer broker compensation paid to the company by the listing brokerage shall satisfy the buyer's obligation for the brokerage fee shown above, provided that the BBC is equal to or more than the amount shown above. In the event the BBC, so do you guys see where that covered Mike, your question, when the builder's offering 4%? Currently, right now, as your brokerage agreement stands, it says that if they're offering to pay more than you charge, that's fine. Okay? When this gets revised again, whatever that looks like, it will be different. For now, if they're paying you more than you're charging your client, that's fine. If they're paying you less, that's what we're going to talk about next. In the event that the BBC is less than the brokerage fee or any compensation offered by the listing brokerage or property owner to the company, it's less than the brokerage fee, the buyer may negotiate with the property owner and or the listing brokerage to satisfy the buyer's remaining obligation to pay the brokerage fee. Buyer shall pay any remaining difference at closing. In the absence of any agreement with the property owner and or listing brokerage, the buyer shall pay the brokerage fee at closing. So this is where on my cheat sheet, this is the conversation and what it looks like. So we're on the buyer broker agreement script. So the next section outlines our commission fees. Just like any other professional that you would hire, we do charge a fee for our services. The only difference is that we can usually structure that the seller pay this fee. I'm at the bottom of the second page. The only difference is that we can usually structure that the seller pay this fee upon the close of your purchase, so there is no out-of-pocket expense to you. In the case that the seller is not offering our fee, we've had great success in negotiating with them to pay it. In the very slim chance that they won't pay our fees at all, you would be responsible for our fees, but we haven't had that happen in the 15 years we've been in business. So lean on your track record, right? Like I'm giving you an example of what I would say because I can confidently say to my clients, I've been doing this for a long time. I've never had to have a client pay it. Right? If you feel like you're going to lean on the fact that your buyer needs to know that they're going to pay you no matter what, structure it that way. If you feel like there's a medium in between, like for example, hey, say they're only offering a 2% commission, I can go in and negotiate on your behalf to get that other 1% paid. In the off chance that they can't or won't agree to that, then you would be responsible for making up that 1% difference. Okay? Questions? Mike? Yep, ahead of time. That might look something like, hey, Mike, I'd like to show your listing at 123 Main Street. Before I schedule an appointment for my clients, they're in a position where they can't pay their own, they can't pay my fee out of pocket. Are you offering a buyer agent compensation on your listing? Barb?
Are we gonna have some classes ahead of time to go over a conversation like this so that we're much more practiced?
Yeah, I would imagine that that would be in your morning conversation practice. Yes.
We just talked about this one.
Anyone else? Questions before we move on? Okay. So section 3. Who wants to read that for me? Barb. Oh, sorry. You're right. 2.3. Brokerage fee due and payable. So this is outlining when, right? So we know, yes, they'd be responsible for paying it. When do they pay it? Unless otherwise agreed upon in writing by the buyer and the company, the brokerage fee shown above shall be due and payable on A, if a purchase, the date of recording of the documents for closing. B, if a lease, the effective date of the lease agreement. C, if an option, the date the option agreement is signed. So depending on the structure of your transaction in Utah, we don't do a lot of leasing, but if you are working with a lease, it would be when they sign the lease. If you're doing seller finance or some sort of option to purchase, it would be at the signature of the option. And if they complete a purchase, it's due and payable immediately upon the close of the property. Jocelyn.
So it says unless otherwise agreed to in writing by the buyer and the company. So are there other types of, like, say, what if they ask, like, well, can I pay you installments after closing?
Probably. It may look like that, yeah. I think what they're trying to accomplish here is giving you options, right? If your buyer's like, hey, I don't want to lose this house over 1% that I'm going to have to pay you. Can I pay you in 3 installments? Are you going to say no? So yeah, so this is leaving your options open.
With a promissory note, right?
It's going to have to be handled, yeah, via contract. You can't, this is not a handshake business, right? Because everything has to be in writing. Yeah. I don't know what that looks like yet. I would probably recommend it.
Yeah, I'd probably recommend it. I got a contract online once that when I went to enforce it, it was unenforceable. And so what you get for free online maybe is not worth that much.
You get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
All right, so since we only have 20 minutes left, let's does anyone have questions on the protection period and what that means?
On protection period, I do have one on 2.3.
Okay.
That last sentence that wasn't read, if the transaction is prevented by default of the buyer, the brokerage fee shall immediately pay a brokerage fee. Does that mean that if the buyer defaults, that they pay your commission immediately?
If the transaction is prevented by default of the buyer, yes. So that's on section C though. That's on options.
Okay, so that's
Like,
technically an option.
I have a lease option and I get to the end of my lease option, I'm willing to let my deposit go because I decided I no longer want to buy the property. I'd still pay you. Make sense? Anyone have questions on the protection period? No?
What does it have to do with like breach of contract? If I were to breach at the end for some reason and not sign?
I would imagine that you could probably construe it that way. And at the end of the day, do you want to go after your client for 3% when they're already, like, for whatever reason, losing out on purchasing their home, and they're probably already pretty bummed that they lost their earnest money? Like, do you want to earn their business and go help them try to find something else?
I'm just saying, if it's 1%, if the seller's offering 2, not having a crystal ball, like, are we gonna see in the future any financing options for
I know from talking with some of my top lenders, Brant included, Brant has also confirmed this, UWM, who is one of the largest lenders, is currently working on a way to finance that, yes. We don't have an answer yet. Jocelyn's the lender too, she's shaking her head. She's like, yeah, everyone's working on it. No, we don't have anything yet. I would imagine that you will see that very shortly. Section 4. So this is really going again, it's nailing home what it says at the top in section 1. The buyer warrants that the buyer has not entered into any other exclusive buyer broker agreement with any other brokerage that is still in force and effect. Does anyone have any questions on section 4? This is going to become more and more important, right? Especially if we're getting like what Kayla was mentioning, like the 7-day I'll show you houses agreements or the property specific agreements. Like we're going to have to get really good at asking the right questions to see if our clients that we're meeting with that we don't know really and truly have not signed this agreement with somebody else. Because while we're going to be really great at explaining and getting this agreement signed, I can promise you that there will be other companies that send it in a DocuSign, the client sign it, they don't know what they signed, they have no idea. Okay, questions there? Section 5, if you look at my cheat sheet, section 5 outlines our duties to you as the buyer. Our first and most important job is to represent you and your best interests in your purchase. Sometimes that means we find you a listing that is listed either by our team or by another agent in our office. When that happens, that is called limited agency. Limited agency simply means that there is one or more parties to the transaction that have access to the information on both sides of the transaction. And when that's the case, we can still facilitate the transaction. We just have to be fair and confidential in the information that we can share to either party. So I can facilitate the transaction. I can't disclose sensitive information. If they have questions about what limited agency is, we can talk about specific scenarios and when that would happen. The most common instance we're going to see that in is either an unrepresented buyer that wants to buy the listing directly from you, or one of you has a listing and one of you has a buyer in this room and we both work at Keller Williams Salt Lake City. Does anyone have questions on limited agency? This is by far and away one of the biggest mistakes that I see agents make when they're submitting offers, especially like inter-office offers. We need to have that limited agency disclosure filled out, and we need to make sure on the purchase contract that section, I believe it's section 4, is filled out correctly, where it identifies that you represent the buyer, the brokerage represents both the buyer and the seller, and then your coworker represents the other side. Dual agency doesn't exist here. Yeah. Good question.
What was the answer?
We don't have it here, but dual agency is like multiple agents can represent a listing. Section 6, this is my favorite section because it makes me look like a boss. And this is how I present it. So section 6 is fun because it lets you know that I'm a great realtor. In fact, I'm probably one of the best realtors that could be representing you. And like, feel free to rip this off, you guys, because it's a really good way to explain section 6. I'm a terrible home inspector. I'm not an attorney. I can barely do my own taxes. I don't want to do yours. I'm not a contractor. I'm happy to refer you to all of these professionals. I use them, I trust them. I've been using them for a long time. And it's not going to be me. I'm really good at my job, and that's to represent you in a real estate transaction, but that's the scope of my expertise. That's section 6 in a nutshell. Section 7 and 8, these are boilerplate clauses that you'll find in most contracts. They simply state if that you were to get into a dispute, what happens? So do you go to litigation before you can file, or sorry, do you go to mediation before you go to litigation? What does that look like? The losing party pays attorney's fees in the court case. That's section 7 and 8, and have them read through it and then ask them if they have any questions. Section 9 is the authorization for our brokerage to disclose what you paid for the property on the multiple listing service. This is important because Utah is a non-disclosure state, And what you pay for your home is not on public record. Because as real estate professionals, we need to know current values in order to advise you on whether or not you're getting a great deal on your purchase. We need your permission to disclose on the back end of the MLS, which is only accessible to members of the MLS, the details of your purchase, but don't worry, it won't be public information. Does anyone have questions on that section? Okay. Section 10. This outlines that there is an attachment to the agreement. For our brokerage, you are always going to select R on section 10 because we have an affiliated business agreement. So what I say to that is we network with a lot of other professionals and trades, and some agents in our office have an ownership interest in some of the businesses that we recommend. So we want you to know ahead of time the interest in these companies, and we'll go over that disclosure in a second at the end of the buyer broker agreement. That affiliate business agreement is important for you for two reasons. Number one, there is a group of agents in our office that own shares in both our lending, our in-house lending, IntroLend, our title company, and our insurance company that we recommend, and we have to disclose that interest to all of our clients as a brokerage. So that's number one. Number two, it's your CYA for any contractor that you recommend to your clients. It says in that agreement that while we do our best to vet these contractors, we are not responsible for making sure that they do their job, right? We're happy to recommend them to you. We're not responsible if they mess up. So it's a really, really good document that we crafted for you guys. It covers you in the case that you have a one-off with a contractor that like totally, you've never had this experience before, but for whatever reason, they didn't show up, they didn't do their job, and your client is really mad. You did your best to recommend good service to them, and you're not responsible for warranting their service. Does that make sense to everybody? Section 11 goes over that we're going to make sure that we adhere to all fair housing laws and then not discriminate based upon any protected classes, and that the seller will do the same thing for you. Section 12 allows for us to send digital documents and get digital signatures. Yay, you don't have to come into my office every time I need something from you. Section 13, this has a lot to do with seller financing. It's your due on sale clause, right? So this is how I explain it. If you are getting your own home loan and you are getting your own mortgage, this clause will not apply to you until you sell your home. But if you are going to pursue seller finance, you should know that there is a possibility that the mortgage holder for the seller can call the note due and payable upon the sale and transfer of title of the home. If they have further questions than that, I would have them talk to an attorney. Okay, it's our job to disclose. Section 14 says that the entire agreement plus the attachment that we're just going to go over in a second is our entire agreement and that all parties understand it. And section 15 says that today is the effective date once we all sign it. Does anyone have any questions? And I always want to ask that to them because I have now just gone through the entire document with them. They may have asked me questions along the process, and I want them to have one last opportunity to internalize all of that we just went through and ask me the questions that they have before they sign it. Okay, if they have questions, I'll answer those questions. If they don't have questions, I'm going to say, great, sign here. If you had someone go over this document with you at a very high level before you signed it, how likely do you think they're going to be able to sign it because they understand what they're signing? Right? So the affiliated business agreement, that's an easy one, and I did attach a copy of it for you guys. It looks like this. And the way that I explain it is this document outlines the fact that a group of our agents have an ownership interest in the title company that we recommend, Real Advantage Title. You are certainly entitled to compare the fees or elect to use your own title company. In our experience, Real Advantage has the best service and fees, but let us know if you would like to use another company, and we are happy to arrange that for you. What did you get accomplished in just saying that small little paragraph? You know if they have an existing relationship with a title company. It's a good thing to know, right? Like, how often do we get all set up and like send our orders over to the title company and they're like, hey, my best friend works for XYZ title company?
Although if they pay cash, then the seller gets to choose it.
Not always. It will change if the title companies will do a courtesy close. So if, for example, and I've seen this on the listing side too, if I've gotten a cash buyer and they've said, hey, we know that you want us to use your title company, but actually as a part of our offer, we're going to request that you use ours. So all things are negotiable, right? We just want to disclose the fact that like our title company is vetted, we use them, we trust them. And if you have an existing relationship, we should know about it now because we'd be happy to accommodate that. I just want to know ahead of time. And then for the contractor portion, when you read that affiliated business agreement, here's what it says so that you're aware. Buyer also understands and acknowledges that the company is trained only in the marketing and sales of real estate. Real estate brokers and agents are not trained to inspect, appraise, or provide any other type of service outside the scope of their real estate licensure. What section is that in the buyer broker agreement? Like we just went over this. It's section 6, my favorite section. So again, we're gonna double cover you and let them know that like you're a fantastic agent. You don't do anything else, you just can put them in front of the right people. However, as a full-service professional real estate brokerage, our clients frequently use the services of various other tradesmen, service providers, and professionals. Our company may have a preferred vendor, or your agent may have experience with a tradesman that can help provide you the service you need. Please ask your agent if you would like contact information for contractors. And then it lists like what we would recommend. Buyer also understands that any such referral is provided without guarantee. While we try to vet our referral list with quality providers, buyer is aware that these referrals are for convenience only. Your decision to use the services of any referral is your sole decision and should be based on your personal review, interview, and negotiations with the provider directly. So now you can refer people confidently. Obviously, refer them to people that you trust, that you know run reputable businesses, and in the chance that you have an off, like it just a weird experience and the client is upset for whatever reason, they have signed something indemnifying you that it was a referral as a courtesy and that you're not warranting any of the work. Then we go through the buyer due diligence checklist. Who has a really great way to present that without it feeling overwhelming? Liz.
I basically just say, I'm gonna wait till you're under contract, I'm gonna send you this, you read the whole thing. Here's the 3 or 4 biggies, meth, radon, sewer, homestead.
Okay. Would you have any problem getting that signed ahead of time?
No, I just, my presentation is so damn long, so I wait. And I like it as a reminder.
There you go. Touch point, right? Who gets it signed up front? Kayla, what do you say?
I'm gonna be honest, I haven't been super great at going through these documents with my clients. So I basically just tell them this is what's your due diligence person line.
Okay. So how could you present this in a way that provided a whole ton of value without it being confusing? Because it is a boilerplate document. It's for every transaction you could possibly do in real estate. It's for land, it's for new construction, it's for leases, it's for vacation rentals, it's for investment properties, it's for primary residences. Like, a lot of these inspections are not going to apply to your client. So how would you explain this document and get them to sign it without having to make it confusing? Anyone? Any ideas?
Well, if the buyer due diligence is based on the contract that we write, and that they are protected through the due diligence period.
I like it. I like it. Barb?
Well, seeing as how Utah is a buyer beware state, I think it's important to stress to the buyer that they're responsible for making sure that the property they're purchasing meets all of their standards. It's their responsibility to go through these things and make sure that they're
Bingo, that's it. So my job as a professional is to inform you of all of your options, right? I want you to understand that during the due diligence period of your contract, you can do any and all inspections that you deem necessary for you to make an educated decision moving forward. I am happy to walk you through and answer any questions on any of these inspections that you have. This document in front of you that you have, the buyer due diligence checklist, is a boilerplate document of virtually every single inspection you could possibly elect to have during the purchase period of your contract. Now, some of those are not going to apply. If we're buying an existing home, you're probably not going to need a geotech survey. But if for some reason you deem that necessary, you are absolutely entitled to have that done, right? So we're putting the options in front of them, and then like Liz said, explaining that, hey, in my experience with a residential transaction, here are the 4 inspections that you are probably going to want to see. One of them is likely going to be required by your lender, and that's an appraisal. All of the others are optional. I want you to know what your options are, just so that when we get to that period, you have this list and you have predetermined what inspections are going to be important to you. That's why I get it signed ahead of time, Liz, is because I want them to have that list and read that list and know ahead of time what they're absolutely going to want to have done during due diligence. Because if they want to have a meth test, a mold test, a sewer scope, a home inspection, a geotech, a land survey, like all of that, I know that my due diligence timeframe is probably going to need to be at least a week, probably 2 weeks long, and we're going to want to schedule it right away because I'm not going to be able to get a surveyor out next day. I'm not going to be able to have a meth test done and results back in 2 days. You know what I mean? So I'm just giving them options so that they can be prepared to make that decision when the time comes. Yes.
Let's just say in the rare instance that someone doesn't want to do this, they're going to buy the property for the land, do a tear down, build something new. How do we explain this to them and then make sure that we're not held liable for them to go, oh, you didn't.
That's the next form. So they sign acknowledging that they have received the entire list of inspections that they could possibly do. The next form that they're going to look at is for your protection, get a home inspection. And that explains the difference between a home inspection and an appraisal. Now, why does this form exist? It exists because people think that appraisers tell them the condition of the home. That is not the case. And so the way that I frame this is this document outlines the difference between a home inspection and an appraisal. The main difference between the two is that the home inspection outlines the physical condition of the property, and the appraisal is just an opinion of value that the bank uses to justify loaning you the amount of money for your mortgage and ensuring that they're making a good investment with their money through you. So what have I done there? And I've separated the two, right? They are different. And I've also let the buyer know that the appraisal is an opinion, right? This is, if we see that, if we've done our research, and I can tell you confidently that I feel like if you get the house at this price, you're getting a deal, and then the appraisal comes back magically at the purchase price, it's an opinion. It's an opinion that the bank uses to justify the amount of money you're paying for the house. It's not necessarily the real value of the house. What is the real value of a house? What a willing, able, and ready buyer is willing to pay and what a seller is willing to sell it for. And that agreement is what the house is worth, right? We saw this in 2020 and 2021 a ton when people were like, I don't care what the appraisal says. I'm just going to pay that much, right? And so explaining to your clients that an appraisal is just an opinion of value is going to go a long way when they feel like you've insured them, they're getting a great deal on this buy, and then the appraisal comes back at just the purchase price. Well, how do I know I'm getting a great deal? Well, we've looked at the comparables and I've shown you what the market is telling us the value could potentially be. What you're willing to pay is less than that, so you're getting a great deal, right? And the appraiser is certifying that yes, it's worth at least that much. You can have a loan on it. Okay, questions on that? Cool. I have one bonus piece of material for you. I like to go over this page, it's the home buying cost with clients, because I feel like for a really long time in our industry, buyers agents especially have represented their services as what? Free. Are your services free? No. So I want them to go into this eyes wide open and know that there are costs associated with buying a home. The first costs are going to be your closing costs and your down payment. This is what you're going to talk with your lender about. You want to know how much money you need on hand to close your deal. The costs associated once you have an accepted offer. Your earnest money. Everyone's like, what's that? I'm like, it's your good faith deposit that actually goes towards your down payment when you decide to complete the purchase. If you decide to cancel the purchase before your deadlines, that money is refunded to you. It is my job as your agent to make sure that you don't lose your money. So at every deadline in our contract, I am going to be checking in with you before that deadline to make sure that you're okay with letting that deadline pass, right? So now you've got buy-in, now you're building trust. They know that you don't want them to lose their money, but they also understand that there is money upfront that they're gonna have to put down, right? Then the home inspection. These typically cost between $300 to $500 depending on the scope of the inspection. Most inspectors will need to be paid upon the completion of the inspection. This is not a cost that is wrapped into your loan. Whether you buy the house or not, the inspector will need to be paid for their work. What did that just do? It needs to be adjusted, I know. I did have one the other day that was only $335, and I was like, that's awesome. They didn't want mold, meth, sewer, yeah. They are still between $300 and $500 if you don't have any of the extras.
What your question was, is the time that the payment inspector.
Yeah. So when they say, wait, I have to pay for that no matter what, isn't $500 investment to figure out there's $50,000 in repairs going to be worth it to you whether or not you buy the house? It'd be better to spend the $500 and figure out that this house is a total lemon, and you will thank your lucky stars you spent $500 instead of buying it and figuring out you now need to pay $50. Yep. Yeah, setting that expectation up front of like, hey, if we make an offer, you are this serious about buying it. It alleviates, people ask all the time, they're like, Linda, do your clients ever ask if they can still go see more homes after they want to make an offer on one? Hardly ever. You know why? Because they understand the investment, because I've explained it up front. Okay? The next one is the appraisal, and this is typically between $500 and $700 depending on your lender and the loan type. Your lender will usually order the appraisal once you give the go-ahead. However, sometimes they won't, so talk to your lender. This cost may be wrapped into your loan or may be charged outside of your loan. Also talk to your lender. Regardless of what happens with the appraisal or if you end up buying the property or not, the appraiser will need to be paid after he or she has completed the appraisal. Nick. Yeah, the appraiser gets paid when the appraisal's ordered. So if your lender's paying for it, that's why I say it twice in there, talk to your lender, because your lender might charge you. Can you guys do that, Jocelyn? Can you charge the client so you eat it for the appraisal? Or do you guys just do paid outside of closing all the time?
We pay it outside closing.
Yeah. So, I mean, back in the day, I mean, I'll show my age here. Yeah, but back in the day, the lender would order the appraisal and then you'd pay for the appraisal at closing. And with contracts falling out, appraisals have become a paid outside of closing costs. So more often your appraiser will say, or your lender will say, hey, we're ready to order your appraisal. Are you ready to order it? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, cool, what's your credit card number? Like you're gonna pay for that.
They send you the payment directly to the appraisal.
Yeah. I think I've paid for it every time, yeah.
But doing it that way, you have to disclose the cost of the appraisal upfront.
Yep.
So a lot of the times, if you lender will actually have to claim the cost because it is disclosed to them.
Right, yeah, it'll show up as a lender credit.
It'll show up as a credit.
Yep. Did you have another question? Okay. Any questions there? Okay, the last piece, and then I'll let you guys go. Here, this is the commission piece. This is what Barb wanted to know. Here at Abode SLC, we do our very best to negotiate our pay with the seller and make sure that you are not paying commission out of pocket. The market right now is very competitive, and we do our best to ensure that you get the home that you want despite whatever the seller is offering as compensation. Our team charges a 3% buyer's agent commission, and about 95% of the time, that's what the seller side is offering. This, again, also might need to be adjusted.
Sounds good.
In the case the amount is lower, there are several ways to either wrap this cost into your loan, pay it outside of the sale, or negotiate a combination of both of these things for you. We just want you to know upfront that our services are not free like some agents misrepresent. We work hard for you. That is why we ask for your commitment to work with us exclusively with the next document that we're going to review. That's the buyer broker agreement. So I present this, the cost, before I go over the buyer broker agreement. In the case that the commission is offered by the selling side is 2% or higher, we will forgive the remaining 1% in the hopes that you will send us a referral, and we have earned that right. Our goal is for you to be our client for life and a raving fan, not just capture an extra 1% on one transaction. And we hope you find value in this along with our top-notch services. This is your opportunity to really decide what are you willing to do and what are you willing not do, and how are you going to present that to your clients in a way that shows them that your goal is to help them. Your goal is not about the commission, right? If you help enough people, they're going and do a really good job and provide value, they're going to tell their friends. My goal in my business has always been to earn a referral rather than to chase 0.5%, right? I would encourage you all to consider the same. And if you're going to draw a hard line in the sand and say, no, absolutely not, I work hard and I deserve that 3% no matter what, have a contingency plan for how you're going to explain for your buyers to pay that out of pocket. Right? Make it so they aren't questioning it. Make it so it's easy for them to understand if this happens, then this happens. Right? Who has questions? Thank you. Did we hit everything? We talked about the lawsuit. We talked about how to better articulate value. I think explaining what you do is really important. What happens if the seller offers less than I charged? Did everyone get those little tidbits? Did everyone understand how you close to signatures? Do you have any more questions? If they say no, great, sign here. If they say yes, answer their questions. You haven't done a good job articulating your value. And the cold lead conversion, Jocelyn, did I answer that for you? Okay. You're good. You're good. We have to go back to the idea that we're professionals, right? Like, we provide a really big value. We help people through the largest transactions of their lives. Why would we act like it's such a flippant opportunity to go open a door? It's so much more than that.
Well, my experience is, you go open one door, they do love the house, they write the offer, they don't get it. Yes, they're working with you.
Yeah, not you, because you didn't get it.
I always just show them the house and then take them to my office for the buyer's consultation. Like, once I meet with them in person, it's easier to get the consultation, but I was so stuck in that I just have to practice.
How much more valuable would that be for you if I didn't waste your time? Yeah? I don't just like walk into the doctor's office and be like, hey, can you see me now, right now, today? No. Like, you got to schedule, in some cases, like a 6 to 8 month waiting lead time for an appointment. Congratulations, I'm a professional. I'm not going to make you wait 6 months to meet with me. I'd be happy to meet with you even today, the time I would have driven to open the door for you. Can you meet at my office and let's go over the whole process, answer all of your questions, and make sure that you know all of the properties that fit what you're looking for. Okay, thanks you guys.
Let's see.